love my name, my first name, Cheyenne. I think it's beautiful. It's a long, pretty, beautiful name, but it's just so much.
For so long, Pickle Wheat stayed silent while the world only saw the adrenaline-fueled hunts and bayou bravado of swamp people. But now, after walking away from the spotlight, Pickle finally speaks. The words are raw, bittersweet, and unflinchingly honest. This is her truth. The cameras captured the high-stakes alligator hunts, the family traditions, the mud and mosquitoes, but they missed what was happening when the red light blinked off. Stay with us. What happens next will change how you see the swamp life that captivated millions, and the young woman who chose to leave it all behind. When a rising star walks away from television fame, we're conditioned to expect scandal, a contract dispute, behind-the-scenes drama. But Pickle Wheat's departure from History Channel's Swamp People cuts deeper than industry politics. It touches on authenticity in an age of reality television, the preservation of a vanishing way of life, and a young woman's journey to define herself beyond the camera's gaze. For 9 seasons, Swamp People brought Louisiana's Atchafalaya Basin into living rooms across America. The show transformed local alligator hunters into unlikely celebrities, their dialect subtitled "Their Dangerous Work" packaged into 30-minute arcs of tension and release. Among them was Pickle Wheat, who joined the cast as one of the youngest female hunters, bringing fresh energy and a new generation's perspective to the bayou narrative. What happens when your family tradition becomes entertainment? When your livelihood, one that stretches back generations, becomes a brand? And what price does authenticity pay when ratings are on the line? Pickle Wheat's story matters because it sits at the intersection of preservation and exploitation, of heritage and commercialization. It asks us to consider what we're really watching when we tune in to reality television, and what responsibility networks have to the cultures they showcase. Born Jessica Wheat in Pierre Part, Louisiana in 1995, Pickle grew up where land and water blur into an intricate maze of cypress and Spanish moss. Her nickname, given by her father when she was just a toddler with a fondness for dill pickles, stuck, becoming both her calling card and later her television identity. The bayou wasn't just her backyard, it was her classroom. By age 5, she could identify every creature that slithered, crawled, or swam through the murky waters. By 8, she could navigate the waterways by boat, reading the ripples and reflections like urban children read street signs. At 12, she participated in her first alligator hunt under the watchful eye of her father, Troy Wheat, a respected hunter whose family had worked these waters for generations. "My dad didn't raise me any different because I was a girl," Pickle would later recall in a 2019 interview. "He just taught me to respect the swamp, to understand it's more powerful than any of us. The gators don't care if you're a man or woman when they're coming at your boat." Her education wasn't limited to the bayou. Despite the pull of family tradition, Pickle's mother insisted on school attendance, on homework completed even after long days on the water. The duality shaped her. One foot in the ancient traditions of alligator hunting, one in the contemporary world of social media and teenage dreams. In 2016, when producers from Original Media scouted the region for fresh faces to join the cast of Swamp People, they found Pickle, then 21, confident beyond her years, and visually striking with her bright smile and ease on camera. What they saw was television gold, a young woman defying gender expectations in one of America's most dangerous professions. What they couldn't see was how that very spotlight would eventually drive her away. Pickle's debut on Swamp People in Season 9 came at a critical moment for the show. After 8 seasons, the producers needed fresh energy, new storylines to keep viewers engaged. Her introduction as Troy Wheat's daughter and hunting partner provided exactly that. A generational narrative, a father-daughter dynamic that softened the show's often masculine energy. The camera loved Pickle. Her natural charisma, authentic bayou accent, which required fewer subtitles than many of her castmates, and genuine skill with the dangerous work made her an immediate fan favorite. Letters poured in from young girls who'd found an unexpected role model in this fearless hunter. Merchandise featuring her image sold briskly. By mid-season, her social media following had exploded. "I went from nobody knowing me outside Pierre Part to people stopping me at gas stations in Texas," she told Louisiana Life magazine in 2020. "It was weird having strangers know things about my life, about my family." But television success came with unspoken pressures. On a cool morning in October 2018, during filming for Season 10, those pressures became visible to anyone paying close attention. The production crew had set up on the eastern edge of the basin, where Pickle and Troy were tracking a particularly elusive 12-foot alligator nicknamed Old Man by locals. The script called for building tension, for near misses, and mounting frustration. But nature doesn't follow scripts. When Pickle and Troy efficiently located and harvested the animal within the first hour, the producer's disappointment was palpable. "Do it again," came the instruction. But this time, maybe argue a little about strategy. And Pickle, could you look more worried when your dad takes the shot? Troy looked at his daughter, an unspoken communication passing between them. They did the second take, added the manufactured drama, but something had shifted. In unaired footage later described by a crew member, Pickle can be seen sitting alone on the bow of the boat during a break, staring into the water with an expression that television audiences never witnessed. Doubt, confliction, a young woman, wondering if the price of fame was worth the compromise of truth. The show made it seem like every hunt was life or death. Pickle would later explain. But that's not how it really is when you know what you're doing. Sometimes it's just quiet work. The real bayou has its own rhythm, and it's not always exciting enough for TV. Her rise continued on screen, but behind the scenes, the seeds of her departure were already taking root. The relationship between swamp people and the actual people of the swamp was complicated from the beginning. When the show debuted in 2010, it offered an unprecedented platform for Louisiana's alligator hunters, bringing attention to a traditional way of life increasingly threatened by environmental change, coastal erosion, and economic pressures. For many families, including the Wheats, the show represented both opportunity and risk. Financial reward balanced against potential misrepresentation. History Channel and original media positioned themselves as documentarians, capturing an authentic American subculture. But the reality of reality television is that authenticity often bows to entertainment value. As swamp people grew in popularity, so did the pressure to deliver dramatic moments, to shape raw experience into compelling storylines. By the time Pickle joined in 2018, the show had established patterns that would increasingly conflict with her experience of the swamp. Production schedules compressed the natural rhythm of the hunt. Cameras required multiple takes of moments that, in authentic hunting, happen once or not at all. Story producers encouraged interpersonal conflicts that, off-camera, either didn't exist or were resolved with the straightforward communication typical of working people. The first season, I was just excited to be there. Pickle shared in a podcast interview after her departure. "I thought, this is a chance to show people our way of life, to help them understand why we do what we do. I didn't realize how much would get lost in translation." The crossing of paths between Pickle's lived experience and the show's narrative requirements became increasingly strained during Season 10. While she maintained a professional relationship with the production team, small moments of tension accumulated. When producers suggested a romantic subplot between Pickle and another young hunter from a neighboring community, despite her having a long-term off-camera relationship, she politely but firmly refused. When they pushed for more dramatic confrontations with other hunters over territory, she reminded them that the basin operated on unwritten rules of respect that had managed the peace for generations. "There came a point where I felt like I was playing a character named Pickle, instead of just being myself," she later explained. "And that character was getting further from who I really am." The intersection of authentic tradition and commercial entertainment created a crossroads that would eventually force a choice. For the young woman who had grown up reading the subtle signs of the swamp, the signs of an unsustainable situation were becoming increasingly clear. April 2021. The Louisiana spring had arrived early, painting the basin with new green growth and the steady drone of insects. It was the final week of filming for Season 12, and the production had taken on a frantic quality. Ratings had dipped slightly in the previous season, and network executives were pushing for a dramatic finale to recapture audience attention. The scene was set on Pickle and Troy's boat, tracking what producers described as the biggest alligator ever featured on the show. Camera operators balanced precariously on the narrow craft, sound technicians struggled with the constant rustle of wind through cypress trees, and a producer hovered nearby, occasionally interjecting with suggestions for dialogue or action. What viewers eventually saw was a high-tension hunt, culminating in Pickle making a perfect shot on a 14-foot alligator, a triumphant moment that became one of the season's promotional highlights. What they didn't see was what happened moments before that perfect shot. They wanted me to miss first, Pickle later revealed in her 2022 interview with Bayou Life magazine. They actually asked me to intentionally miss so they could build more drama. And something broke in me at that moment. Alligator hunting isn't just entertainment for families like the Wheats. It's a carefully managed conservation practice, a livelihood, and a tradition that demands respect for the animal and the environment. An intentional miss meant potential suffering for the animal or danger for the hunters, neither acceptable to someone raised with the bayou's strict ethical code. In unaired footage described by a crew member present that day, Pickle can be seen lowering her rifle, turning to the producer, and saying simply, "That's not how we do things. That's not who we are." She then raised her rifle again and made the clean, ethical shot as she had been taught. The producers got their dramatic footage, but something fundamental had changed. In that moment of quiet resistance, Pickle Wheat made a decision that wouldn't become public for months. What viewers saw as a triumphant season finale was for Pickle a private turning point. The distance between her lived experience and its televised representation had become too wide to bridge. The woman who had never separated her identity from the authentic traditions of the basin found herself unable to reconcile that authenticity with the demands of reality television. As the production wrapped and the crew packed away their equipment, Troy noticed his daughter sitting alone at the stern of the boat, her expression unreadable. "You good, Pickle?" he asked. Her answer was soft enough that the boom mics didn't catch it, but those close to her would later say it was the first time she voiced what would soon become her reality. "I don't think I can do this anymore." But here's where it gets complicated. The public narrative around Pickle's departure, when it was finally announced in late 2021, was streamlined into television's familiar language. "Pursuing other opportunities," read the press release. "Grateful for her time on the show," added a statement attributed to Pickle herself. Social media buzzed with speculation, contract disputes, personality conflicts, the usual suspected culprits when a popular cast member exits a successful franchise. The reality, as it often is, was more nuanced. "I never had a big blow-up with anyone," Pickle clarified months later. "There wasn't some dramatic moment where I stormed off set. It was 1,000 little moments where what was being filmed drifted further from what was true." While Pickle's on-camera skill had made her a fan favorite, it had also created escalating expectations. Producers increasingly positioned her storylines around her youth and gender, the girl who could keep up with the men, a framing that, while empowering to some viewers, felt reductive to someone who had never seen her capabilities as exceptional or gender-defined. "In the basin, you're just a hunter or you're not," she explained. "The show wanted me to constantly prove myself, to make my gender the story. But that wasn't my experience growing up. My dad and the other hunters I respected just cared if you worked hard and knew what you were doing." There were financial complications too, rarely discussed in the carefully managed narrative of reality television. While Swamp People created celebrity, the compensation structure for cast members was far from Hollywood standards. Participants received per-episode fees that, while significant compared to traditional hunting income, came with hidden costs. Time away from independent hunting, restrictions on other income opportunities due to contract exclusivity clauses, and the complicated tax implications of sudden television income. For the Wheat family, who had always maintained economic independence through diversified skills, hunting, fishing, guide services, and small-scale farming, the golden handcuffs of television contracts represented a departure from generations of self-sufficiency. Off-camera, Pickle was also experiencing the strange dissonance of televised identity. In local restaurants, fans approached expecting the camera-ready personality, expressing disappointment when they encountered a quieter, more thoughtful young woman than her edited television persona suggested. On social media, viewers felt entitled to opinions about everything from her hunting techniques to her personal appearance. "The hardest part was feeling like I was disappointing people just by being myself," she shared. "When the real me didn't match what they saw on TV, They assumed I was having a bad day or being rude, but that edited version was never the whole me. Troy Wheat, while supportive of his daughter's television opportunity, had his own reservations that grew over time. A man of few words on camera and off, he nevertheless made his position clear in a rare 2022 interview. The basin's been providing for our family for 5 generations before any camera showed up. It'll provide for 5 more after they're gone. Some things matter more than being on TV. What no one saw coming was how Pickle's private decision would eventually spark a larger conversation about representation, authenticity, and the true cost of reality fame. The bayou has its own pace, slow, deliberate, resistant to the artificial urgency of television schedules. After Pickle's quiet departure from Swamp People, she retreated into that natural rhythm, declining interview requests and stepping back from the social media presence that had become part of her television persona. January 2022. A cold front had swept through Louisiana, bringing rare morning frost to the basin. In a small cafe in Pierre Par, where locals had long grown accustomed to the occasional presence of television crews, Pickle sat alone, scrolling through her phone. The new season of Swamp People had premiered the night before, the first without her presence since she'd joined the cast. "You miss it?" asked the cafe owner, a woman who had known Pickle since she was small enough to need a booster seat at the counter. Pickle's response, later recounted by witnesses, was simple: "I miss the basin. I've been right here all along." The statement captured the essential misunderstanding at the heart of reality television. For viewers, Pickle had left something enviable: fame, exposure, the validation of the spotlight. For Pickle herself, she had simply returned to the authentic life that had never stopped, even when cameras temporarily framed it for outside consumption. The months following her exit were a period of quiet recalibration. She returned to independent hunting, to the family's diverse approach to making a living from the land and water. Troy, too, stepped back from the show, his loyalty to his daughter outweighing the pull of continued television presence. In a rare personal post shared to her scaled-back social media in spring 2022, Pickle offered a glimpse into her post-television perspective, a simple photo of sunrise over the basin, mist rising from the water, no filter or enhancement. The caption read only, "The real show." Every morning, no cameras needed. Industry insiders noted that Pickle's departure came amid a larger shift in reality television, as viewers increasingly questioned the authenticity of supposedly unscripted programming. Former producers from various shows began speaking out about manipulation tactics, reconstructed scenes, and the psychological toll on participants. While never positioning herself as a whistleblower, Pickle's quiet exit added weight to growing public skepticism. The financial adjustment proved less difficult than industry observers predicted. While television had provided a concentrated income stream, it had also limited the Wheat's traditional diverse approach to livelihood. Released from exclusivity clauses, Pickle and Troy expanded their guide services, offering authentic basin experiences to visitors who wanted to understand the swamp beyond its televised representation. "There's something powerful about showing people the real basin," Pickle told a local newspaper in one of her few post-show interviews. "No second takes, no manufactured drama, just the water and the wildlife, and centuries of knowledge about how to live with both." What remained unspoken during this period of readjustment was the deeper reasoning behind her choice, the full story that would eventually emerge when she was ready to share it. March 2023. The conservation center at the edge of the Atchafalaya Basin had drawn an unexpected crowd, not for the usual educational programs about wetland preservation, but for a panel discussion titled "Representing the Real Louisiana." Among the panelists, folklorists, historians, a filmmaker known for documentary work in the region, and, surprising many, Pickle Wheat. It marked her first public speaking engagement since leaving Swamp People, a calculated choice to break her silence in a context focused on authenticity rather than entertainment. When the moderator eventually asked the question everyone was waiting for, why she had walked away from television success, the room fell into expectant silence. "I left because I couldn't be two people anymore," Pickle began, her voice steady but emotional. "The basin taught me that anything not built on truth eventually sinks. The show wanted me to be someone I recognized less and less." Entertainment value started mattering more than the traditions we were supposedly preserving. In a thoughtful hour-long conversation, later published in Louisiana Cultural Quarterly, Pickle articulated concerns that went beyond personal experience to touch on broader questions of cultural representation. She described the gradual shift from documentation to dramatization, the subtle pressures to conform to storylines that reinforced viewers' expectations rather than revealing the complex reality of basin life. The hardest part to explain is that I'm grateful for the experience, she clarified. The show did bring attention to the basin, to the erosion threatening our way of life. It showed people a world they might never see otherwise. But at some point, the packaging became more important than what was inside it. What emerged wasn't a tale of villain and victim, but a more nuanced reflection on the inherent tensions between authentic experience and its mediated representation. Pickle acknowledged the economic realities that make reality television attractive to networks and participants alike. She expressed understanding for fellow cast members who continued with the show, recognizing that each person navigates the balance of opportunity and compromise differently. In her 2023 interview with Bayou Life magazine, she elaborated, "My dad taught me that when you hunt alligator, you have one responsibility above all others. A clean, respectful harvest. No suffering, no waste, no shortcuts." I started feeling like the show was taking shortcuts with our story, with who we really are. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. The revelation was healing rather than accusatory, framed as a personal choice rather than a universal judgment. It resonated particularly with younger viewers who, across various forms of media, were increasingly questioning the authenticity of the content they consumed. What no one anticipated was how Pickle's thoughtful explanation of her departure would spark a broader conversation about the responsibility of media when representing traditional cultures, a conversation that would eventually influence how producers approach similar shows in the years that followed. Today, Pickle Wheat navigates a unique position in the cultural landscape of Louisiana, neither fully private citizen nor conventional celebrity, but something more interesting. A bridge figure between traditional knowledge and contemporary visibility, between the bayou's ancient rhythms and the modern appetite for authentic connection. Her departure from swamp people has evolved from industry gossip to a case study in conscious choices about representation, in university courses examining reality television ethics. In discussions about cultural preservation, her decision has become a reference point for the complex negotiations between visibility and integrity. What Pickle's choice highlighted, notes media ethicist Dr. Elaine Marquez in her 2024 book, Scripting Reality, is the often invisible labor performed by reality participants, not just the activities captured on camera, but the psychological work of reconciling public persona with private identity. For the basin itself, the legacy is equally nuanced. Swamp people brought unprecedented attention to the region, driving tourism and creating economic opportunities. It also sparked interest in conservation efforts addressing the critical erosion threatening these wetlands. Yet, this visibility came packaged in televisual conventions that sometimes reduced complex ecological and cultural systems to simplified entertainment narratives. In response to these tensions, Pickle has found her own path forward. In 2024, she launched a small-scale educational initiative bringing school groups into the basin, offering an unfiltered introduction to the ecosystem and traditions that shaped her. She occasionally consults for documentary filmmakers committed to authentic representation of the region. Her social media, once dominated by promotional content for the show, now showcases the basin's seasonal changes and traditional knowledge, interspersed with conservation information. The camera never left the basin, she reflected in a 2024 interview, echoing the insight that first led her away from television. It just stopped trying to make the basin into something it isn't. For young women in traditional occupations, Pickle's journey has particular resonance. Her refusal to allow her gender to become her defining characteristic, her insistence on being recognized for skill rather than novelty, offers a template for navigating industries where women's presence is still framed as exceptional rather than natural. The truth is quieter than the headlines. While Swamp People continues with new cast members and evolving storylines, Pickle Wheat has returned to the life that preceded fame, hunting seasons, and family gatherings. The steady work of maintaining traditions while adapting to environmental and economic changes. The difference is in the intentionality, in the conscious choice to value authenticity over exposure. Perhaps the most telling measure of this legacy came in an unplanned moment during a basin tour she led in early 2025. When a participant asked she missed being on television, her response captured the journey from silence to speaking truth. "I'm not against sharing our story. I'm for sharing it right." For so long, Pickle Wheat stayed silent while viewers formed their own narratives about why she walked away from television fame. But silence, like the still water of the basin, often runs deeper than it appears. Her truth wasn't about scandal or contract disputes. It was about the quiet dignity of choosing authenticity over exposure, tradition over trend. In the basin, hunters learned to read subtle signs, a ripple in still water, a shadow beneath the surface, the quality of morning light. Pickle read the signs of her own experience and made a choice that honored generations before her. What looked like walking away was actually a return to something essential. Now, as you reflect on Pickle's journey, we invite you to share what resonated most with you. Was it her commitment to representation, the courage of choosing a quieter path, or perhaps the reminder that some stories can't be contained in 30-minute episodes? They need the fullness of time, the honesty of direct experience, and the courage to speak one's truth.
It looks like y'all have a good time.
Yes, we do. We have a very close relationship, me and Mr. Troy. Like he is like my grandpa, and I don't know, the first time we met, we just like clicked and hit it off.